Dr. Supachai Panitchpakdi, thank you again for the honor of coming to the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy and for the excellent lecture you gave. We'd love to ask you just a few follow-up questions to go a little deeper into some of the issues. So our first question would be in connection with the cultural diplomacy. In your opinion, is the role of cultural diplomacy acknowledged enough in the present debates about international economics and trade? Do you see culture as a potential tool in solving the current problems of the world economy?
I believe that our multilateral negotiations have become more and more, unfortunately, more and more predominated by political and economic reasons. Of course, I mean, economic consequences of our global agreements could be crucial for a country, but I do miss the soft touch of cultural diplomacy in a way that we could not only try to get to be more acquainted with each other. See, because negotiations sometimes get to be quite acrimonious and rough, because you don't take time to get to know each other. I think if we can soften up international negotiation by some forms of cultural diplomacy, getting to know and understand each other, to be friends, to be speaking the same language, not definitely the same language, but of course in having common understanding of certain issues, I do believe that we would be able to facilitate more complicated negotiation in the future. I do see in certain areas with concrete application of culture as part of the solutions of our global integration efforts, like in the concept of having the revival of the Silk Road that I discussed in my lecture. We work with cities along the Silk Roads, ranging from Korea to China to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, into Europe, Eastern Europe, so that we can reconstitute the facilities with which travelers in the old days, thousands of years ago, can make use of, so that they can ply their ways, or they can facilitate the travels of tourists, or they can be committed to certain creative economies like entertainment, so that people can become closer. And this is one certain concrete area that culture could be part of the international integration scene.
Okay, then the second question, you already talked a little bit about it during your speech about the European financial crisis. How do you think European countries could overcome these crises in your view? And what kind of strategy should they imply to move again towards economic growth?
I do not pretend to be more knowledgeable than the European colleagues, but I have my own set of recommendations that I have been trying to relay to European colleagues, so that we can have some kind of discussion. The first one is more tactical. The first one is about macroeconomic policies. I really believe, together with my colleagues at UNCTAD, that at the moment, the time is not ripe for pure austerity measures. Why? Because we have not yet fully recovered, and this is, I think, this is a misdiagnosis of the situation at the moment. I think it's a misdiagnosis to be saying that we have come out of the crisis. We have not come out of the crisis. We still have a lot of debt overhang. We are still in the process of debt unwinding, and in this process of debt unwinding, you cannot have restrictive policies on the economy to shrink the economy. At the time that we have debt unwinding, government should be spending, because private sector is not yet spending. When the private sector starts to spend, you would see unemployment being reduced, more employment, then government hold back in the expenditure. But what happens now, I said it's tactical thing, because at the moment consumers, businesses are not spending. So in Europe, government must spend, even if they have to borrow. So this is my first thing. So macroeconomic policy will have to be well diagnosed, and diagnosed in a way that we are fighting demand deflation, and we are not fighting the excessive burden. That will have to be fought sometime after people begin to spend again. The second is institutional. I do believe that European integration is an unfinished agenda. In order to have a European Union with single currency system, you need two more things or three more things to do. The first one is you need like I said this morning, the fiscal union. You need to be able to jointly issue bonds that will be used commonly to finance deficit in some of the needy areas. You have to admit, in the United States, if Florida doesn't have the federation government, Florida will be declared bankrupt long ago, or California in the United States. But they survive because they have the federation support. So this is one thing that Europe needs, fiscal union. The second one they need is the real role of the central bank. The central bank with a role to backstop countries and banks by doing the last resort lending. And the last one is the banking union, which I think Europe is making an effort to do, but it's going to take a long time. But this is important, to have a banking union so that the bank supervision, financial system will have to be supervised along the same line so that they can determine the kind of stress that European banks are going through. And so they can have the kind of anticipation of crisis to come, and they can prevent that from happening.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to continue with a question of women's rights. In many parts of the world, women are gaining increased access to the global market via public and private sector jobs. However, this access remains unequal, and female representation in leading position is compromised. Should this inequality be tackled on an international level, or should measures be primarily enacted at a domestic level? What action is the UNCTAD taking in this regard?
Well, it should be tackled at all levels. The gender inequality issue or gender empowerment issue should be tackled at the national level, particularly in the areas of institutional arrangement. That women's rights being discussed, talked about a lot, but never really enacted into the national legislative system. So that will have to be taken care of. The right to have equal pay, the right to have ownership of assets, the right to exceed financial system, this has to be institutionalized, and this will have to be done at the national level. At the international level, United Nations and also UNCTAD, we have explicit programs. At the UN, the Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, has a few years ago established another agency called UN Women. And this UN Women is an agency that works very intensively with all of us in the UN system to uphold the right of women and to be analyzing the impact of women contribution to economic development. I would cite you one area, in the areas of farm development, agricultural development. If you don't give extension services, particularly concentrating on women participation, you will miss out on a major source of input for agriculture, because women provides a very strong and consistent and productive input into the farming sector. And if they are left out of the extension service education system, left out of finance, left out of technology, then you cannot really develop farms. So this is what we are working on together with UN Women to be able to really empower women, not to be just talking about why should women be employed, but we're talking about what should be done on the ground to help women. Yes.
I like to say it. Thank you very much for your time. Dr. Supachai, it was an honor and privilege to have you. We're here with us today, and
thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.